All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Desk Side Chat. I'm Connor, Client Success Manager here at RegPack. Today, I'm going to just talk about some of the recent updates on RegPack, some of the new functionality that we've added to the system. We do have some more detailed notes about that as well, but just want to show some examples of the new tools that you're going to have at your fingertips now. If you do have other questions about your project or anything else that I can help address, feel free to start chatting those right now. The chat questions here is our host. We can start taking those as well. I'll make sure that there's some time at the end, whether that's about some of these new features or something else related to your project. So without further ado, let me actually go ahead and start by just sharing something that I'm really excited about because I have been asked about this a couple of times. We are now sharing release notes from the development team. This is something that you can have bookmarked or look up when we are giving you some updates from our newsletter. You can see the details here. So if you're curious about the specifics of what's getting released with our updates, this is something that we now have as a resource that you can access. This is updated by our development team. So specifically today, I'm going to go into a couple of key features that we have added this month connected to especially interesting for family or group checkouts related to the dashboard navigation as well as the checkout process. So there are a couple of different art resources that we have that were added in our newsletter from this week. Just going to go ahead and show a couple quick examples of both the new dashboard tools that you have as well as some of the checkout controls you have as well. So I have created a new test profile for one of my Desk Side Chat projects. I just want to show what that looks like with the dashboard right now. Again, this is something that you can customize and personalize for your project. So I'll go ahead and walk through how to do that in just a second. But the dashboard is what we typically have to show, what's been ordered, show how to navigate to specific forms or stuff that's been completed and incomplete so that applicants can review orders, make changes to registrations or add additional participants or children if it's a family registering. So specifically, I'm going to go into, so I'll show how to edit the dashboard in general. Specifically, we've added some new tools connected to the child profile widget that you're seeing right here. So specifically, the ability to control, what's being displayed on these individual profiles, including like the balance as well as the option to add or remove profiles from here as well. So there is the child profile, which is going to show the registration information. The orders widget is going to show, this is basically a display of the cart. So you'll have in a group system, the cart for each participant or each child here. If there have been orders made, it'll show the orders, it'll show what's been paid for or the amount that's been paid for. In this case, there's been a deposit for these products. So some of the deposit went to each product here, but they have not yet paid the full balance due for that child. And the second sibling that's been signed up, we don't have orders there yet. So you can see on the cart review, you can, if there aren't any orders for the profile, you can add right from the cart review, or there's the option to add an option from the registration summary as well. Okay, so now the dashboard, how to make that change. So I'm going to go over to Settings and Forms. For the dashboard, we're going to go into Settings and Forms and then scroll down to System. So the dashboard is actually a form, and there are some system forms that typically we recommend not making too many changes, but the dashboard, you do have a lot that you can personalize and customize here. So when you open up the Edit Form fields, you'll see that each of these components of the dashboard are added like fields. Like the same way you'd create a registration form, you have fields here on the dashboard. One quick note about the dashboard itself, you aren't able to ask or gather new information on a dashboard form. This is something that can't be submitted or saved. Like if they're going to click add products, it'll take them to a separate form to add the products. If they're going to make a payment, it takes them to your checkout form that you've already created. So you're not going to ask for new information on the dashboard. This is for displaying information in the ways you can organize that. So starting from the top here, this is just a summary here that's added. This is a free text field, so you do have ability to edit or change this. If you want to have a summary or next steps for people who have either finished the registration flow and have gotten to the dashboard or are logging back in and are at the dashboard, this is something that you can personalize for your registration process. Won't go into too much more detail. If anybody has questions about that, feel free to let me know. The balance due, this is going to be just a summary of the balances for total for the groups. Let's go ahead and close this out. So the balance due, this is just going to show, again, the total. It's not going to show balances for each individual. So if you have multiple siblings that are signed up, the way that you'd see the orders and balances would be through these two widgets down here. The parent guardian section. So child profiles is going to have a registration summary for each subunit, each child or team member that's getting signed up, each applicant in the group. The head level information, parent guardian section, that's where that's going to be. So this is going to show a summary of the forms for the parent or the person who's signing everybody up. So again, this one is a pretty straightforward one as well. For all of these, you can be changing the title though. So for example, if this is not going to be families where parents are signing up kids, you can change this to organizer or organization, and then this is employees or team leader, and these are the teammates. However, you need to set it up to make sure that it's matching what your actual registration process looks like. I'll keep moving down here. The orders. So this is a cart widget. So if you make a change or anything like that, so the form field here, we go to add field to form. This is going to be the same widget that you're seeing when you're looking at payments and orders, the cart. So pretty straightforward there. And again, if you do need to make a change to the title, you can. So the big change, now that we get to the child profile, so this is where we've added a couple more controls that you can have in order to make sure that it makes sense in terms of what you need to have displayed, what you would like applicants to be able to edit from the dashboard, and then of course, again, being able to personalize the description here. So again, if this is not a family system, you have that control to be able to edit the titles there to reflect that. Okay, so in here, we've got the display orders and payments for each camper. What that means is if I just toggle over to my example here, when I have this on, it's going to show the balances here. That's what that is reflecting. So if I were to turn this off, you would only see the balances from the orders, the cart list. When I have it on, it's going to show on the child profiles here. The allow adding a camper through the widget. So again, if you do have people who are logging back in and want to just add another applicant, add another sibling, after they've already done the initial registration flow, that's where you have the ability to keep that on here. So typically by default, we have this added to the child profile widget. But there are cases where you might not want to have somebody add in the second profile or an extra profile after they've already signed up the initial registration. So the allowing deleting camper through the widget. So this is something where by default, if there's already a payment that's going towards, so for example, for child 1 test, it's not going to make it easy for anybody to delete or archive this specific registration profile. But if you do want to make it so that they can control the ones that they haven't completed, so for example, child 2 test didn't really complete any of the forms, haven't ordered anything, haven't made payments, you can give the control to the applicant, in this case the parent, to delete that profile if they're trying to make sure that they only intended to have the one child signed up. If you want to prevent that from being an option, so even in the case where, let's say we want to just make sure that even though maybe they haven't finished this registration, we don't want them to be able to delete the profile here, you can turn this setting off now. So again, this is in the child profile widget from the dashboard. And then the always present ad services products if they can. So this one is interesting. This one I'm actually really excited about because I have been asked about it before. So for people who have, if they're eligible for selecting products, so whether or not they've added something before, to be able to turn this on, let's go ahead and save and see what that would look like on the dashboard. So I just saved it on the form. I've added that ability here. So I can go ahead and refresh the dashboard page here. So now, even though child one already has some products in the cart, say we were returning for a next second session of summer, for example, or another option after they really liked their first week, whatever the case may be, that option is by default in there when you save that option. So this is something that I've been asked about. I know definitely for a situation like that where you are having people who would return to add additional products to their cart, makes it a lot easier. Previously, they would have to navigate to the program selection form using this drop down here. So this makes it just more obvious if you want to include that option. So again, the child profile, these toggles here, you now have control. This is what and that's an example of what it looks like when all of those options are turned on. So that's sort of my summary of the dashboard. Again, I'm really excited about it. I know we definitely want to make sure it's easy for people to sign up, but also when they finish their initial sign up, what happens next? Can they review their orders? Can they make changes? And now you have more control to make that easier to do for your registrations from the dashboard form. So let me go ahead, save that. So again, scrolling down to system, that's where you're accessing the dashboard form. Now, the next part I wanted to cover, we have some new controls is the checkout form. So if I go to edit the checkout form, and then let's toggle over to, let's just make a payment for this child one test since we already have an order. We've made the deposit that's required, but just so we don't have to add new orders to the second, I'm just going to go to, let's actually do a new payment method. So by default, your checkout is going to look something like this, right? Where you have this option. We do have the save payment method right here. In terms of what we have added or changed with the checkout process, I'm just going to go ahead and open the checkout form that's here and what the widget is showing now. So these options, the allowed payment methods, this is something that has been part of RegPack for a while, where you can control which payment methods are allowed, whether you want to include all different online payment methods, if you want to default to a specific one. So for example, if you have credit card, e-check as options that you have your merchant account set up with, and you want to encourage people to use the e-check option to save on fees or anything like that, you can turn this off. This option by default is set up by, that's the option that you'll have set up when you are starting. If you needed to change that, you reach out to our team about it. So the other options that you now have available for on your side is the payment method options, as well as the amount settings. So we do have the details on what is in the what these changes make on the checkout widget settings article that we just shared. And these settings do include the ability to make changes to the checkout widget, what's allowed to be saved, whether you want to have the user have control over what's saved, what's not, and then the amount settings. So specifically for a group system, that's one of the reasons why I'm in this group system, is the ability to show, have control over when somebody's making a payment, if they're going to automatically include everybody who has a balance, or specifically, or choose specifically a certain person who they're paying for. So in the example that I have, this is a group checkout form. So the way this is set up is if I did have multiple orders, it would show those orders. Since I have the one child, it currently has just the one payment as an option, one product that can be paid for. So you can see right now, I do have the ability to remove a certain child from the payment, the current payment I'm making. If I do have multiple different orders and balances, I would also have the ability to add children to the payment. So you can control whether you want that to be an option or not on these amount settings here from the checkout widget. So I do have a question that just came up about these changes in general. Is it advisable to make these changes in the middle of a registration cycle or implement only when starting a new cycle? So when it comes to, well, both of these changes really, in terms of the dashboard and the checkout process. So these changes you can make in the middle of a registration cycle. Making these changes isn't going to affect past registrations or past payments that have already been processed. And they do, what it does change is how people who are currently making registration or logging back in to update or view a registration, how they interact with the project itself, the registration process. So if you're used to having if your applicants are used to having registration function a certain way, then maybe you would wait to a new cycle if you want, but making these changes, like turning any of these on, and same with the dashboard, isn't going to affect your existing registration. So, I mean, especially if you're getting feedback or you want people to have more control now, I would definitely say you should go ahead and test this out or implement it. If you wanted to play around with how it works for you, you could definitely create, I definitely recommend that everybody has a separate project that they're just using for testing. These changes are specifically how it affects your registration flow. So if you wanted to just make sure that it is user-friendly for you to implement these changes, then to do so. I hope that helps address that question. It is a good question because there are certain changes that we would recommend you do wait to make in the system. But we definitely have also tried to make it a lot easier to make some of these changes, even if you're currently taking registrations as well. And this is a case where if it makes sense in terms of ease of use, you can go ahead and make the changes now. So I'm actually going to go ahead and wrap up that part of the conversation here on the current project that we're in right now. If anybody does have questions about these specific changes, how a family checkout would be different from like an individual checkout, let me know. I do have one other thing I wanted to share in terms of the project level. I think that's a kind of good segue in terms of a new project or an existing or old project, some things that we've added as well. Okay, so the first thing I want to show is creating a new project. The reason I wanted to show that is because now we're going to create a project. Let's say, for example, this is actually the 2020 through 2021 school year. Let's get ready for next school year's enrichment projects. If I'm going to copy this over. Now, whenever you're either copying a project or creating a new project, you'll see that there's a prompt for setting up your merchant account. The reason I'm showing this, so since this is a test project, I don't have any real merchant account that's set up. You, on your project, when it's active, when you're copying one that you've already had, you'll see the one that you have as your default as the setup merchant account. This would be at the top option. But you are also going to have an option here to set up an additional merchant account. So for example, for copying an existing project, you would probably, in most cases, keep that same merchant account. But let's say you have the school year enrichment courses, but you also have a summer enrichment courses, and maybe even if you're using the same, this is under the same organization, maybe you want to have the funds streaming in separately as you're having registrations for both. So you have that option to now set up a new merchant account or confirm which merchant account you'd like to have linked when you are setting up a new project. So in order to update the merchant account currently, you need to create a new project. So if you wanted to have a new merchant account, you're going to need to create a new project. If you're doing it through this way, that's the current way to do that. But you do have that option to confirm which merchant account you're using at the setup now. So that's on a new project. One other thing I wanted to just cover here that we now have as something that you can control is the ability to archive a specific project. So in order to do that, have to so in order to previously we did have the ability to, if you have a list of projects, you know, that's something where you'd have your all your active projects show when you're looking something up. We did have the ability to organize your projects by having some show as archived. Now you have that ability to take a look at that when you're looking at your project itself. So when I go to the system status, that's where you're seeing that archive project option. What this does, this is simply an organizational tool. So you have the ability here to change that status. So if you do have a whole new wave of projects that you're creating, and you don't want to be having these ones at the old ones at the forefront of your view here when you're navigating between projects, you have that ability. One note that I do want to add here is that when you are going to archive your project, what that does automatically close it. You will still have access to reactivate or review that project from when you're toggling in your project list. When you're viewing all your projects, you'll have the option to include inactive projects as well. But I would definitely recommend you finish your registration cycle so that after the program is done, confirm that everybody's balances are up to date and download any reports that you have, so that way you don't have to come back to it later, since it's going to be harder to get to just a little bit. So while I'm at the project settings, so that's where the general settings is where you find that. Just to recap on that merchant account information, the payments section is where you are going to see the merchant account information as well. So when I do have a merchant account that's set up, it's going to show that here. Since I don't, it said that it's telling me that the payments are not processing. One final note on the project management here. One other recommendation I have is for your most recent project, I would leave this one open if you are copying it. So for that same example where I was going to copy the project for next school year, we'd want to keep the existing one open if you are allowing on the copy settings to have the user information ported over. So this is the default setting that allows people to, if your forms are the same, the basic information is copied over so they don't have to refill out all of the basic information during registration. If you are going to archive a project, that will automatically turn that off. So again, it is purely an organizational tool at this point. And all RegPack accounts, you are going to have full access to as many applicants as you want. So but if you do have a lot of different projects on your account, this makes it easier for you to take care of yourself. One question that just came up: when I unarchive a project, will all the admins that have access be able to see it as well? So it's a great question. So if you do have certain permissions where you have a, certain assistant admins or any admins that you have that don't have access to all projects, and you have them have specific project access, so that access isn't going to be affected by the status of the project itself. So if you were to update the who should see a project, I would recommend you double check by doing that from the admin management here. So that way you can confirm ReggiePack has access to 27 projects, but we can change that by going into the admin profile and changing that there. Okay. So I think there might be one other question here that just came in. I have payment questions about the account. Is it possible to do transition pricing? So we did reach out to all admins about the specific pricing changes this year. We did have an option to take advantage of transitional pricing this month. Definitely, since it is still June, I would recommend, if you have a point of contact or our payments team, reaching out to ask about that. That's definitely something where if you're looking to switch to a 1-year license, we have had that transitional pricing. So again, reaching out to our team directly or going to the help and asking a billing question, that would be one of the ways you could take advantage of that. Definitely reaching out now and not waiting to the end of the month, I would definitely recommend that for that discounted rate for sure. Yes, our annual plan, especially with the new options that we have here, is a great option. All admin licenses include unlimited applicants, unlimited projects, and unlimited collaborative level admin, so the assistant and view only. And the annual pricing does save a lot. And this transitional price, the price point breakdown comes to the same level of savings breakdown that you'd have for a 2-year plan without having to commit to the 2 years up front. So you could start with that 1 year this year and have that same level of savings now. So definitely would reach out to our team to see if we can still take advantage of that for your account. So I'm going to go ahead and, one last thing in terms of for an annual plan in general, if you're adding license or upgrading licenses, you can do that from the admin management. So as I had taken a look, so for example, we were at the ReggiePack example. If we wanted to upgrade ReggiePack's billing, we could go up here, and then you'd have the option to upgrade the license. So currently, ReggiePack has a collaborator license, which puts Reggie as an assistant admin. If I wanted to adjust that, I could add in an annual plan here. So these are the options that we have here that you have access to. If you do want to reach out to our team to see if we still have the ability to take advantage of that transitional discount, I would definitely reach out to either payments@reggipacks.com or someone on our team who can help with that. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up for today. Again, a lot of really exciting changes. We have a lot more that's still on the roadmap from our development team. I did start off today going over, we do now have a one that you can access, a database of release notes that our development team has created for you to review. So I did cover most of the highlights of some of the exciting new changes that you're able to take advantage of, but more of those details are now available on our website. So that's something that we also included in this week's newsletter. And this is something you can also search for release notes or updates. That's going to be something that you can find as well. So I hope this helps. Again, I'm really excited about some of the changes. We've got more on the way. If you have feedback or other questions, feel free to reach out, or until the next time, the next Desk Side Chat. Have a good rest of the week, everyone.